Time for our fan Zoom of the week. I didn't have to go very far to look for this guy. You'll recognize him. I'm the one in the family who still has some hair. He's my older brother, Shawn Griffin. He lives in Seattle, and he's definitely not a Seahawks fan. Shawn Griffin, Navy veteran, and our fan Zoom of the week. All right, big bro, I got to ask you first and foremost, what did you think of the way the Packers closed out the season against the Bears?
You know, I thought it was a pretty flawless performance, except for just two things that a coach likes to see on tape because it's one of those things that you can get better. Tavon Austin's fumble on the kickoff return was pretty surprising. I actually thought he had an open field and he just kind of coughed it up. I think the other one is what you get from Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Left 6 points on the field on the opening drive in the second half. But other than those two, kind of clearly open items, I thought they closed pretty well. You had a desperate Bears team that wasn't watching, the scoreboard because they had the chance of winning, get in. But fortunately for the Bears, the Cardinals couldn't make up for the loss of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, we've seen that from MVS all season long. He has the flair for the spectacular, and then he makes the routine look really rough, that's to say the least. All right, Is this 13-3 team better equipped to take that next step from last year and make it to the Super Bowl and win it?
I think they are. I think a big part of that is having home field. That's number one. I think, and I'm not saying anything different than, I'm sure you are or any of the other experts within the media, but Aaron looks a lot more comfortable in the offense this year. I think, it's interesting. They've gotten pretty much nothing out of their first three picks of this year's draft, except for AJ. AJ's kind of the question mark going into the playoffs. Jamal came back this week, played really well running back behind Aaron Jones. But the great thing about Matt LaFleur is he's using his weapons, and he's isolating players and putting them in the right spots. Even Daphne coming out of the backfield for the touchdown catch. I think the offense is much more balanced. I think the defense, despite, the inside linebackers being a little bit soft, you get some great play out of Chris Barnes. You get some great play out of Kamal Martin. And then Christian Kirksey, continues to make plays as a veteran. He had the interception this weekend. I think the biggest, not necessarily surprise, but the really optimism for me is Rashawn Gary. I mean, Rashawn Gary has really played with a high motor this year. And opposite Zadarius Smith, and I know Preston Smith is getting most of the reps at outside linebacker, but when Rashawn Gary's been on the field, he's made plays, whether it's pressures or stripping or, he's really played well. So I think that's a big difference.
All right, we all know Seattle is not in the NFC North, but the Packers and Seahawks have developed a rivalry in this past decade, from the Fail Mary to that collapse in the NFC Championship game, the Packers beating the Seahawks last year at Lambeau in the playoffs. What's it really like being a Packers fan living in Seattle?
It's pretty excruciating, actually. As you know, the Seahawks have, one Lombardi trophy. And I emphasize Lombardi trophy. They act like they have 10 Lombardi trophies. They're pretty insufferable. The interesting part is the Let Russ Cook campaign started out well for them this year. Russell Wilson, obviously former Wisconsin Badger, started well, was in the MVP conversation. And they've had a tale of two seasons. The first half of the year, their defense was awful on a historic pace of being awful. And they actually tightened up. They got Jamal Adams back. Carlos Dunlap came over from a trade from Cincinnati. They've tightened up the defensive end a little bit. And then the offense has kind of sputtered, whether it's the injuries to Chris Carson. But the Seattle fan base, and the way I've kind of separated is if you meet a Washington Husky fan, they're probably a decent Seahawks fan. If you meet a Seahawks fan who they're only a Seahawks fan and that's all he knows is Seahawks, their football IQ is not very good. See, it's pretty insufferable.
Definitely a difference from Packers fans, that is for sure. They know people on the practice squad from years ago even. All right.
Exactly. Well, and one more thing, Burke, the one thing that I think that is a little bit making Seattle nervous going into the postseason are the rumors of John Schneider potentially going to the Lions to run the Lions organization.
Yep.
John Schneider has been, to me, one of the best GMs in the NFL for the last decade. They're pretty nervous out here. The radio in Seattle is chirping about that quite a bit.
Yep, De Pere's finest, Notre Dame grad here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. All right, real quick, who you got in that Super Bowl and who's winning it?
I can't see any other path than the Packers and the Chiefs, and I think this may be one of those all-time watch Super Bowls with Mahomes and Rodgers. I'm the hometown guy. I think Rodgers gets his second championship this year. I think he gets his second Lombardi Trophy. He was a sure-in Hall of Famer anyways, but he elevates himself in the conversation to the all-time great quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's definitely true. No question about that. I'm going to go with the Bills, though. I mean, Buffalo has been on fire, and they put up 56 against a decent Miami team. We shall see in a little bit. Now, you were a pioneer of sorts when it came to writing about sports on the World Wide Web back in the 1990s. Tell us about what you started when you were back in the Navy.
It's interesting. And for those that can Google up the Wayback Machine, the Sports Weekly Journal, sportsweeklyjournal.com, tswj.com for short. It started in an odd way. It was, the Coors Silver Bullets had an all-women's professional baseball team, which turned into, hey, we should be online with some of the writers from Sporting News and USA Today. And really, and one of our more famous alums is Tracy Myers out of the Chicago Sports Network currently. She was at, I think, either the Dallas Star Tribune at the time, but it was about a dozen writers and about 6 IT people that, we gained experience. We actually at the time were the #1 sports website in the country between 1995 and 1998. In fact, the funny part is #2 and #3 were Bill Simmons, he had the Sports Guy website, and Pete Fiatchak with collegefootballnews.com. 1998 coincides with me getting out of the Navy and actually going into IT and cybersecurity, which, I just didn't have the time to keep it going, and I shut it down, unfortunately, before the internet boom came and Bill Simmons and Pete Fiatchak cashed in. But those guys had great sites, and we had some pretty talented people as well. One of the things, and Burke, I think you remember this, is there was an old front page football game. This was pre-Madden, that we ran simulations of the college football playoffs that you can still read if you go out to the Wayback Machine and Google up tswj.com.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I know I ended up writing a few Packer articles way back in the day in my early fledgling journalism career. And I can honestly say this, before the podcasts and before the internet and social media and every website, and there's a million of them now, that was one of the few places you could get some great information, and you were one of the co-founders of it, that's for sure. All right, big bro.
Well,
go ahead.
Hey, one last story, if you remember, little brother, that when the 2 stories that we broke, big stories that we broke for TSWJ, #1 was Ronald Curry, if you remember at the time, #1 basketball player and football player in high school, decommitted from decommitted from Virginia and went to North Carolina. He told that to me and one other person. The other person happened to be Dick Vitale. So, I got that scoop with Mike DeCourcy of Sporting News. And you actually informed me that it was a done deal for Reggie White going to Green Bay, which we broke on the website at the time then.
Yep. All right, big bro. I can honestly say I wouldn't be where I am in my sports career without you playing football and basketball in the backyard growing up or checking all those box scores and in the newspaper. Navy veteran and Packers fan Shawn Griffin, our Fan Zoom of the Week.
Thanks, Logan.